Zayn al-Rashid stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse suite, gazing out at the glittering skyline of Dubai. The city sprawled beneath him, a testament to ambition and wealth, qualities he had in abundance. At 32, Zayn was the undisputed heir to the al-Rashid empire, a conglomerate that spanned industries from oil to tech, with tentacles reaching into every corner of the Middle East and beyond. His phone buzzed, drawing his attention away from the view. It was a message from his assistant. "Your grandfather requests your presence at the family estate tomorrow morning. Urgent." Zayn's jaw clenched. These summons from his grandfather, the aging patriarch of the al-Rashid family, had become more frequent lately. He knew what awaited him, another lecture about tradition, family, and the responsibilities that came with the al-Rashid name. Responsibilities that, in his grandfather's eyes, went far beyond the balance sheets and profit margins that consumed Zayn's days. As he prepared for bed that night, Zayn couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled over him. His grandfather's health had been declining rapidly, and with it, the old man's patience for Zayn's single-minded focus on business seemed to be wearing thin. The next morning, Zayn's sleek Bentley pulled up to the gates of the family estate. The sprawling property was an oasis of green in the desert, dotted with date palms and fragrant with the scent of jasmine. As he walked through the marble-floored halls, memories of his childhood flashed through his mind, but Zayn pushed them aside. Sentimentality was a luxury he couldn't afford, not when there were deals to be made and empires to expand. He found his grandfather in the study, a cavernous room lined with ancient texts and modern art. The old man sat behind an imposing desk, his once robust frame now frail and sunken into his chair. "Ah, Zayn," his grandfather said, his voice raspier. Then Zayn remembered. "Sit, please, we have much to discuss." Zayn took a seat, his posture rigid. "Grandfather, I hope you're well. I have a board meeting this afternoon, so if we could—" The old man held up a hand, silencing him. "Always in a rush, aren't you? That's precisely why I've called you here today." He paused, fixing Zayn with a penetrating stare. "I've made a decision about the future of our family's legacy." Zayn leaned forward, his interest piqued. This was it, the moment he'd been waiting for. The official handover of the reins. He'd proved to his grandfather that his methods, his relentless pursuit of growth and innovation, were the key to securing the al-Rashid dynasty for generations to come. But his grandfather's next words shattered that illusion. "I've added a clause to my will, Zayn, one that concerns you directly." Zayn's brow furrowed. "A clause? What do you mean?" "To inherit leadership of the family's holdings," the old man said slowly, each word deliberate. "You must be married within the year." The words hung in the air between them. Zayn felt as if the ground had suddenly shifted beneath his feet. "Married?" he repeated, incredulity coloring his tone. "Grandfather, surely you can't be serious. My work, the company, is that all you can think about?" his grandfather interrupted, a hint of anger in his voice. "The company? Zayn, you're missing the most important things in life. Love, family, connection. These are the true foundations of our legacy." Zayn stood abruptly, pacing the room. His mind raced, calculating the implications of this unexpected stipulation. "This is unnecessary," he argued. "I've doubled our profits in the last 3 years alone. The al-Rashid name has never been stronger." His grandfather sighed, a deep, weary sound. "And yet, you've never been further from understanding what that name truly means." He gestured to the photographs lining the walls, generations of al-Rashids, their faces beaming with pride and love. "Our strength comes from our bonds, Zayn, not just our business acumen." Zayn turned to face his grandfather, his expression a mask of cool determination. "Fine. If marriage is what you require, then I'll find a suitable candidate, someone who understands the demands of our position and won't interfere with my work." The old man shook his head sadly. "That's not the point, my boy. I want you to find love, to open your heart." "I'll handle this my way," Zayn cut in, already pulling out his phone. "Now if you'll excuse me, I have that board meeting to prepare for." As Zain strode out of the study, his grandfather called after him, "Remember, Zain, a year. You have 1 year to not just marry, but to learn what it truly means to be an al-Rashid." The words followed Zain as he left the estate, his mind already formulating a plan. He didn't need love or emotional entanglements. What he needed was a business arrangement, a contract that would satisfy his grandfather's outdated notions, while allowing him to maintain his laser focus on what really mattered, expanding the al-Rashid empire. Back in his office, Zain barked orders at his assistant. "I need options. Find me suitable candidates for a temporary marriage arrangement, someone who will understand the terms and won't expect anything beyond a mutually beneficial contract." As his team scrambled to fulfill his demands, Zain turned his attention back to the stack of reports on his desk. He'd solved this problem like he solved everything else, with strategy, efficiency, and an unwavering commitment to his goals. Little did Zain know that his grandfather's stipulation was about to set in motion a chain of events that would challenge everything he thought he knew about success, love, and the true meaning of legacy. Across the world, in a small, struggling cafe in London, a young woman named Amira Hassan was about to close up shop for the night. The aroma of coffee and freshly baked pastries still lingered in the air, a bittersweet reminder of her late mother's dream. As she wiped down the counter, her eyes fell on the stack of unpaid bills tucked beside the register. Amira sighed, running a hand through her curly hair. The cafe had been her mother's pride and joy, a little piece of their Middle Eastern heritage nestled in the heart of London. But now, with mounting debts and dwindling customers, it was slipping through Amira's fingers. She locked the door, flipped the sign to closed, and made her way to the tiny apartment above the cafe. As she climbed the stairs, Amira couldn't shake the feeling that she was letting her mother down. She needed a miracle to save the cafe, and she had no idea where that miracle might come from. Little did Amira know that halfway across the world, a man she had never met was setting in motion a plan that would change both their lives forever. As Zain al-Rashid's team began their search for the perfect contract bride, fate was weaving together two worlds that seemed impossibly far apart. The stage was set for an encounter that would challenge perceptions, ignite passions, and ultimately teach both Zain and Amira the true meaning of love, family, and the power of human connection. The London rain fell in a steady drizzle, pattering against the windows of Amira's cafe. It was another slow day, the kind that had become all too common lately. Amira wiped down tables with mechanical precision, her mind wandering to the stack of bills that seemed to grow taller by the day. The bell above the door chimed, snapping her out of her reverie. A man in an impeccably tailored suit stepped inside, shaking raindrops from his umbrella. Amira's heart skipped a beat, not because of his striking appearance, but because any customer was a welcome sight these days. "Welcome to Jasmine's," she said, mustering a warm smile. "What can I get for you?" The man glanced around the cafe, his gaze sharp and assessing. "A double espresso, please, and perhaps a moment of your time?" Intrigued, Amira nodded and set about preparing his drink. As the espresso machine hummed to life, she studied her customer from the corner of her eye. He exuded an air of authority, his posture rigid, and his eyes constantly darting to his phone. She placed the steaming cup before him. "Here you are, sir. Now how can I help you?" The man took a sip, his eyebrows raising slightly in appreciation. "Excellent coffee. My name is Omar, and I represent a client who has a unique proposition for you, Ms. Hassan." Amira's guard immediately went up. "How do you know my name?" Omar's smile was practiced, revealing nothing. "My client is very thorough. He's aware of your current financial situation and believes he can offer a mutually beneficial solution." "I'm listening," Amira said cautiously, her mind racing. Was this some kind of scam, or could it be the miracle she'd been hoping for? "My client requires a wife," Omar stated plainly, "a temporary arrangement purely for business purposes. In exchange, he's prepared to offer financial compensation that would more than cover your debts and secure the future of this charming establishment." Amira's jaw dropped. "A wife? For business? I'm sorry, but this sounds absolutely insane." Omar nodded, as if he'd expected this reaction. "I understand your skepticism, Ms. Hassan, but I assure you this is a legitimate offer. My client is a prominent businessman from Dubai. He needs to fulfill certain family obligations. Your role would be to appear as his wife for social events and family gatherings, nothing more. Amira's head spun. The whole idea was preposterous, something out of a far-fetched movie plot. And yet, she couldn't help but think of her mother's dream, of the cafe that had been her legacy. Could she really let it slip away without exploring every possible option? "Who is this client of yours?" she asked, her curiosity getting the better of her. Tuition. Omar's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then back at Amira. Perhaps it's best if he explains the details himself. He's in London for the next few days. Would you be willing to meet with him tomorrow? Amira hesitated. Every instinct told her to refuse, to show this strange man and his even stranger proposition. Out the door, but then her eyes fell on the faded photograph of her mother that hung behind the counter. She thought of the endless nights spent poring over the books, trying to make the numbers add up. "All right," she heard herself say. "I'll meet him, but I'm not agreeing to anything." Omar nodded, sliding a business card across the table. "Excellent. The address and time are on the card. And Ms. Hassan? I suggest you keep this meeting to yourself for now." With that, he stood, leaving a generous tip beside his empty espresso cup. The bell chimed again as he left, leaving Amira alone with her whirling thoughts. Across the city, in a luxurious suite at the Ritz, Zain al-Rashid was growing impatient. He paced the room, phone pressed to his ear. "Omar, I don't have time for hesitation. Did she agree to the meeting or not?" "She did, sir." Omar's voice crackled through the speaker. "But I must warn you, she seemed skeptical." Zain waved a hand dismissively. "Skepticism can be overcome with the right incentives. Just make sure she shows up tomorrow." He ended the call and turned to the floor-to-ceiling windows, gazing out at the London skyline. It wasn't Dubai, but there was something about this city that appealed to him. Its relentless pace, perhaps, or the way old and new coexisted in a constant dance of progress. A knock at the door interrupted his musings. "Enter," he called, not turning from the view. His assistant, Layla, stepped into the room. "Mr. Al-Rashid, your conference call with the board is in 5 minutes, and your grandfather has been trying to reach you." Zain's jaw tightened. "Tell the board I'll be there. As for my grandfather, tell him I'm working on fulfilling his request." Layla hesitated. "Sir, if I may, are you sure about this plan? A contract marriage seems—" "It's the most efficient solution," Zain cut her off. "Find me someone suitable, fulfill my grandfather's outdated requirement, and get back to what really matters, growing our empire." Layla nodded, knowing better than to argue. As she left the room, Zain turned back to the window, his reflection staring back at him. For a moment, he thought he saw a flicker of doubt in his own eyes, but he blinked, and it was gone. The next morning dawned bright and clear, a rarity for London. Amira stood outside the address on the card, her heart pounding. The building before her was all glass and steel, intimidating in its modernity. She took a deep breath, smoothing down her simple dress. It was the nicest thing she owned, but she felt woefully underdressed for this gleaming tower of corporate power. "You can do this," she murmured to herself. "Just hear him out. You're not committing to anything." With one final, steadying breath, Amira pushed through the revolving doors and into the lobby. A receptionist directed her to the elevators, and before she knew it, she was being ushered into a spacious corner office on the top floor. And there he was, the man who thought he could buy a wife. Zain al-Rashid stood as Amira entered, his dark eyes appraising her with the same efficiency he applied to balance sheets and contracts. "Ms. Hassan," he said, his voice deep and smooth. "Thank you for coming. Please have a seat." Amira sat, her back straight, chin lifted. She wouldn't let this man intimidate her, no matter how powerful he might be. "Mr. Al-Rashid, I presume. Your associate mentioned a proposition?" Zain nodded, taking his own seat behind the imposing desk. "Indeed. I'll be direct, Ms. Hassan. I need a wife for 1 year. In return, I'm prepared to offer you financial compensation that would not only save your cafe, but set you up comfortably for years to come." Amira's eyes narrowed. "And why exactly do you need a wife? Surely a man in your position—" "My reasons are my own. Zain cut in, his tone brooking no argument. "What matters is the arrangement. You would be required to accompany me to social events, family gatherings, and business functions. You would have to play the part convincingly. In return, your financial troubles would disappear." Amira sat back studying the man before her. He was undeniably handsome, with sharp features and an air of confidence that bordered on arrogance. But there was something else, a coldness in his eyes, as if he viewed the whole world as nothing more than a series of transactions. "And what about love?" she found herself asking. "Doesn't that matter to you at all?" For a split second, something flickered across Zain's face, surprise perhaps, or a hint of long-buried emotion. But it was gone so quickly, Amira thought she might have imagined it. "Love is irrelevant," Zain said flatly. "This is a business arrangement, nothing more. I'm offering you a solution to your problems, Ms. Hassan. The question is, are you practical enough to accept it?" Amira stood, her mind reeling. I need time to think about this." Zain nodded, sliding a folder across the desk. "Of course. All the details are in here, including the proposed compensation. Take a day to review it, but remember, Miss Hassan, opportunities like this don't come along often." As Amira left the office, clutching the folder to her chest, she felt as if she'd stepped into another world. A world where marriages were business deals and love was an afterthought. But as the elevator descended, carrying her back to the reality of her struggling cafe and mounting debts, a treacherous thought crept into her mind. What if this insane proposition was her only chance to honor her mother's memory and save everything she held dear? The doors opened, and Amira stepped out into the sunlight, the weight of the folder in her hands nothing compared to the weight of the decision that lay before her. Amira sat at her small kitchen table, the folder from Zain al-Rashid open before her. The numbers on the contract swam before her eyes, each digit representing a lifeline for her beloved cafe. She'd spent the entire night poring over the details, weighing the pros and cons, trying to reconcile her practical needs with the voice in her head screaming that this was madness. The morning light filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow on the faded photographs lining the walls. Amira's eyes lingered on an image of her mother, smiling broadly on the day they'd opened the cafe. "What would you do, Mama?" she whispered, tracing her mother's face with a gentle finger. A knock at the door startled her from her reverie. Amira opened it to find her best friend Layla, holding 2 cups of steaming coffee. "Thought you could use this," Layla said, pushing past Amira into the apartment. "You sounded stressed on the phone last night. Spill." Amira hesitated, remembering Omar's warning about discretion. But if she couldn't trust Layla, who could she trust? Taking a deep breath, she recounted her meeting with Zain, watching as Layla's eyes grew wider with each detail. "A contract marriage?" Layla exclaimed when Amira finished. "To a billionaire? Girl, this is like something out of a movie." Amira sighed, sinking into a chair. "I know it sounds crazy, but Layla, you've seen the books, the cafe. It's all I have left of Mama. I can't lose it." Layla's expression softened. She reached across the table, squeezing Amira's hand. "I get it, I do. But marriage? Even if it's just for show, that's a huge step. Are you sure there's no other way?" Amira shook her head, gesturing to the pile of bills on the counter. "I've tried everything. Loans, investors, even considered selling. This might be my only option. And this Zain guy," Layla mused. "What's he like? I mean, if you're going to pretend to be married to someone for a year, it'd help if he wasn't a total jerk." Amira thought back to their meeting, to Zain's piercing gaze and confident demeanor. "He's intense, focused. I got the feeling that emotions aren't really his thing. It's all business with him." Layla whistled low. "Sounds like a real charmer. But hey, maybe you'll be the one to melt that icy heart, right?" Amira rolled her eyes but couldn't help a small smile. "This isn't a romance novel, Lay. It's a business deal, pure and simple. If I do this, I go in with my eyes open. No fairy tale endings." As the day wore on, Amira found herself standing in front of the cafe, staring at the peeling paint and the closed sign that seemed to mock her. She thought of all the memories within these walls, her mother's laughter, The regulars who'd become like family, the sense of belonging she'd always felt here. Could she really give all that up? But then again, wasn't that exactly what she'd be doing if she let the cafe go under? With a deep breath, Amira pulled out her phone and dialed the number Zain had given her. "Mr. Al-Rashid, it's Amira Hassan. I've made my decision. I'll do it." There was a pause on the other end. Then, Zain's smooth voice came through. "Excellent, I'll have my team draw up the final paperwork. Be ready to leave for Dubai in 3 days." 3 days? Amira exclaimed. "But the cafe, my things." "All will be taken care of," Zain cut in. "Time is of the essence, Ms. Hassan. I'll see you at the airport." The line went dead, leaving Amira staring at her phone in disbelief. What had she just agreed to? The next few days passed in a whirlwind. Amira arranged for her cousin to watch over the cafe, packed what she could, and said tearful goodbyes to Layla and her regulars. She spun a story about a sudden business opportunity abroad, hating the lies but knowing she had no choice. Before she knew it, she was standing in Heathrow Airport, a first-class ticket to Dubai clutched in her hand. She felt out of place among the business travelers and tourists, her simple sundress a stark contrast to the designer labels surrounding her. "Ms. Hassan," Amira turned to see Omar, Zain's assistant, approaching with a sleek carry-on bag. "Mr. Al-Rashid asked me to provide you with more suitable attire for your arrival in Dubai," he explained, handing her the bag. "You'll find everything you need inside. Mr. Al-Rashid will join us on the plane." Amira nodded, swallowing hard. This was really happening. In a daze, she followed Omar through security and onto the plane, marveling at the luxury of first class. As she settled into her seat, her mind raced with questions. What would Dubai be like? How would Zain's family react to her? And most importantly, could she really pull this off? She was so lost in thought that she didn't notice Zain's arrival until he was seated beside her, his presence commanding even in the spacious first-class cabin. "Ms. Hassan," he greeted her, his tone businesslike. "I trust Omar has provided you with everything you need." Amira nodded, finding her voice. "Yes, thank you. Mr. Al-Rashid, I have so many questions." Zain's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "I understand. We have a long flight ahead of us. We'll use this time to go over the details of our arrangement and prepare you for what to expect in Dubai." As the plane took off, carrying them towards a new chapter neither could have anticipated, Amira couldn't shake the feeling that her life was about to change in ways she couldn't begin to imagine. Zain, for his part, found himself studying Amira when she wasn't looking. There was something about her, a quiet strength perhaps, or an authenticity he wasn't used to in his world of corporate machinations, that intrigued him. He pushed the thought aside, reminding himself that this was a business arrangement, nothing more. But as the lights of London faded below them and the vast expanse of sky opened up ahead, both Zain and Amira felt a subtle shift. They were embarking on a journey that would challenge everything they thought they knew about themselves, each other, and the true meaning of connection. The plane soared onward, carrying with it the weight of expectations, fears, and the faintest glimmer of possibilities. Neither dared to acknowledge. In Dubai, the Al-Rashid family estate stood silent under the desert stars. In his study, Zain's grandfather sat by the window, a photograph of his grandson in his weathered hands. He gazed at the young face, so full of ambition and drive, and hoped that his plan would open Zain's eyes to the things that truly mattered in life. "May you find what you're looking for, my boy," the old man whispered to the night, "even if it's not what you expect." As dawn broke over the city, painting the sky in hues of gold and rose, a new day dawned, one that would set in motion a series of events that would change the lives of Zain, Amira, and everyone around them in ways none of them could have foreseen. The Dubai skyline materialized through the airplane window, a glittering mirage rising from the desert sands. Amira pressed her face closer to the glass, awe overtaking her exhaustion. The Burj Khalifa pierced the sky, surrounded by a forest of skyscrapers that seemed to defy gravity and imagination. "Impressive, isn't it?" Zain's voice startled her from her reverie. Amira turned to find him watching her, an unreadable expression on his face. "It's incredible," she breathed. "I've never seen anything like it." A ghost of a smile touched Zayn's lips. "Wait until you see it up close. Dubai has a way of exceeding expectations." As they disembarked, the heat hit Amira like a wall. Even in the climate-controlled jetway, she could feel the intensity of the desert sun. She was grateful for the elegant, lightweight abaya Omar had provided. Understanding now why her usual attire wouldn't have been suitable, they bypassed the main terminal, whisked through a private entrance where a sleek limousine awaited. As they settled into the cool interior, Amira couldn't help but feel overwhelmed. Everything about this new world seemed designed to emphasize just how far she was from her cozy London cafe. "We'll go directly to the family estate," Zayn informed her, his attention already back on his phone. "My grandfather is expecting us for dinner. It's crucial that we make a good impression." Amira nodded, her stomach churning with nerves. "Of course. Is there anything specific I should know? About your family, I mean." Zayn looked up, seeming to really see her for the first time since they'd landed. "Yes, actually. My grandfather is traditional. He values family above all else. That's why this whole arrangement is necessary." "I see," Amira said softly. "And the rest of your family?" A flicker of something, pain, frustration, crossed Zayn's face. "It's just my grandfather and me, along with some extended family. My parents—" He trailed off, then cleared his throat. "Well, that's a story for another time." Amira wanted to press further, intrigued by this glimpse of vulnerability, but Zayn had already retreated behind his wall of professionalism. "The important thing," he continued, "is that we present a united front. The success of this venture depends on our ability to convince everyone that our relationship is genuine." As the limo wound its way through the city, Amira marveled at the contrast between ultra-modern architecture and glimpses of traditional Arab culture. Women in colorful hijabs walked alongside businessmen in crisp suits. Luxury cars shared the road with camels in tourist areas. It was a city of contradictions, much like the man sitting beside her. Finally, they turned onto a private road, approaching a set of ornate gates. As they swung open, Amira gasped. The Al Rashid estate was a palace in every sense of the word. A sprawling compound of white stone and intricate arches, surrounded by lush gardens that seemed to defy the desert climate. "Home sweet home," Zayn murmured, a hint of irony in his voice. As they stepped out of the car, a flurry of activity greeted them. Servants appeared to take their luggage, while an elderly man in traditional dress approached, arms outstretched. "Zayn, my boy," Ami exclaimed, embracing Zayn with surprising strength. "And this must be the lovely Amira. Welcome, my dear. Welcome to our home." Amira found herself enveloped in a warm hug, the old man's eyes twinkling as he pulled back to look at her. "I am Fahad al-Rashid, Zayn's grandfather. We are so pleased to have you here." "Thank you for your hospitality, Mr. al-Rashid," Amira replied, touched by the genuine warmth in his welcome. "Please, call me Jido. It means grandfather," Fahad insisted. "We are family now, after all." Zayn cleared his throat, a hint of discomfort in his posture. "Grandfather, perhaps we should let Amira get settled in. It's been a long journey." Of course, Fahad agreed. "Zayn, why don't you show Amira to her room? We'll have a proper family dinner this evening to celebrate your arrival." As they walked through the opulent halls of the mansion, Amira's head spun. Priceless artworks and antiques lined the corridors, interspersed with family photographs that hinted at generations of al-Rashid history. "This will be your room," Zayn said, opening a door to reveal a suite larger than Amira's entire London flat. "My quarters are just down the hall. We'll have to make it look convincing, but I assure you, your privacy will be respected." Amira nodded, suddenly feeling very small in this vast, unfamiliar world. "Thank you, Zayn. I'll do my best to play my part." For a moment, Zayn's businesslike demeanor faltered. He looked at her, really looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. "I know this must be overwhelming for you," he said softly. "If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask." With that, he was gone, leaving Amira alone in her palatial suite. She sank onto the edge of the bed, running her hands over the silken sheets. How had her life changed so dramatically in just a few short days? As she began to unpack, Amira's fingers brushed against something familiar, the worn photograph of her mother that she'd tucked into her suitcase. Tears pricked at her eyes as she gazed at the smiling face. "Oh, Mama," she whispered. "What have I gotten myself into?" Meanwhile, in his study, Fahad al-Rashid gazed out the window, watching as Zayn strode purposefully across the grounds, phone in hand as always. The old man's eyes crinkled with a mixture of love and concern. "Ah, my Zayn," he murmured, "so focused on building empires that you've forgotten how to build a life. But perhaps this Amira will be the key to unlocking your heart." As the sun began to set, painting the desert sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, the Al-Rashid estate buzzed with preparation for the evening's dinner. In her room, Amira stood before a full-length mirror, hardly recognizing the woman who stared back at her. Gone was the simple cafe owner from London. In her place stood a vision. In a stunning emerald gown, her dark hair swept up in an elegant style. A knock at the door startled her. "Come in," she called, expecting a servant. Instead, Zayn entered, looking dashing in a perfectly tailored suit. He stopped short when he saw her, an uncharacteristic look of surprise crossing his face. "Amira," he said, his voice low. "You look remarkable." For a moment, the air between them seemed to crackle with an unexpected energy. Amira felt a blush creep up her cheeks. "Thank you," she murmured. "You clean up pretty well yourself." Zayn cleared his throat, visibly pulling himself together. "Yes, well, shall we?" He offered his arm, every inch the perfect gentleman. As they descended the grand staircase together, Amira couldn't shake the feeling that she was stepping into a new chapter of her life, one filled with possibilities she'd never dared to imagine. Little did she know that this dinner would set in motion a series of events that would challenge everything. Both she and Zayn thought they knew about love, family, and the true meaning of success. The stage was set for a night that would change everything. As they entered the dining room where Fahad and a collection of curious family members awaited, Amira took a deep breath. It was time to step into her role as Zayn al-Rashid's wife and into a world she could never have prepared for. The dining room of the al-Rashid estate was a masterpiece of traditional Arab elegance. Crystal chandeliers hung from intricate ceiling moldings, casting a warm glow over the massive mahogany table. Amira found herself seated between Zayn and his grandfather, surrounded by a collection of curious family members whose eyes seemed to dissect her with each passing moment. Zayn's cousin Layla sat directly across from them, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her water glass. "So, Amira," she began, her tone just shy of overtly challenging, "tell us how you and Zayn met." Amira felt Zayn's hand subtly touch her knee beneath the table, a silent signal to proceed carefully. She took a breath, remembering the story they'd rehearsed during the flight. "We met through mutual business contacts in London," she said, her voice steady. "Zayn was looking to expand some of his international investments, and we connected over coffee." Fahad chuckled, his eyes twinkling. "A love born over business. How very modern of you both." Zayn shifted uncomfortably. "It wasn't exactly love at first sight, grandfather." The tension around the table was palpable. Amira could feel the weight of unspoken questions, the careful scrutiny of a family protective of its legacy. She noticed how Layla's eyes never left her, calculating and suspicious. As the elaborate dinner progressed, Amira marveled at the culinary spread. Dishes of lamb, saffron-infused rice, and intricate mezze filled the table. She caught Zayn watching, her with an unreadable expression as she carefully navigated the cultural nuances of the meal. "You're adapting quickly," he murmured so only she could hear. Later that evening, after the dinner and the initial interrogation, Zayn found Amira on the mansion's expansive balcony. The desert night stretched before them, a canvas of stars and infinite darkness. "You handled yourself well," he said, joining her at the railing. Amira turned to him, a hint of challenge in her voice. "Did you expect me to fall apart?" For the first time, Zain seemed genuinely surprised. A small laugh escaped him, not the practiced corporate chuckle she'd heard before, but something more genuine. "No," he admitted, "I didn't." Their moment was interrupted by Fahad, who approached with a weathered, leather-bound book. "Come," he said to Amira, "I want to show you something." The old man led her to his study, a room that seemed to breathe with history. Shelves lined with books, photographs from decades past, and intricate Arabic calligraphy created an atmosphere of profound memory. "This," Fahad said, opening the book, "is the history of the Al-Rashid family. Our legacy is not just about money, but about connection, about understanding our roots." Amira listened intently as he began to share stories, tales of trade, of family struggles, of resilience. She noticed how Zain hung back, seemingly uncomfortable with this display of emotional history. "Your mother," Fahad said suddenly, turning to Zain, "would have loved to see you now. She always believed you had a heart beneath that business exterior." A heavy silence fell. Amira saw something vulnerable flash in Zain's eyes, a pain quickly masked by his usual composure. Later that night, unable to sleep, Amira wandered the mansion's halls. She discovered a small library, its walls lined with family photographs. One image caught her attention, a younger Zain with a woman who must have been his mother, both laughing, their connection evident. "She died when I was 14, Zain's voice came from behind her, making her jump. Amira turned, surprised by his sudden vulnerability. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "It was a car accident," he continued, as if speaking more to himself than to her. "My father had already passed away years before. My grandfather raised me after that." For the first time, Amira saw beyond Zain's carefully constructed facade. She saw a man shaped by loss, by expectations, by a lifetime of protecting himself from emotional pain. "Is that why you're so—" She hesitated. "Detached? So focused on business and contracts?" Zain's walls came up instantly. "This conversation is inappropriate," he said, reverting to his formal tone. But something had shifted between them. A thread of understanding, fragile but undeniable, had been woven. As dawn approached, casting golden light across the desert landscape, Amira realized this arrangement was becoming far more complicated than a simple business contract. Zain was not just a means to save her cafe, he was a complex human being with depth she was only beginning to understand. And somewhere in the mansion, Fahad al-Rashid smiled. His plan was slowly, carefully unfolding exactly as he had hoped. The weeks following the family dinner settled into an unexpected rhythm. Amira found herself navigating the complex world of the al-Rashid family with a grace that surprised even herself. By day, she accompanied Zain to business events, playing the role of devoted wife with increasing confidence. By night, she explored the depths of the family's history, spending hours with Fahad in his study, learning about Arab culture and the intricate tapestry of the al-Rashid legacy. Zain watched her transformation with a mixture of curiosity and something else he couldn't quite define. The cafe owner from London was becoming something more, a woman who moved between worlds with surprising ease, who challenged his preconceptions at every turn. One afternoon, during a particularly important business meeting, Amira's unexpected insight caught everyone off guard. The negotiation concerned a potential investment in a sustainable agricultural project in North Africa. While Zain's team presented traditional financial projections, Amira quietly sketched out an alternative approach during a break. "Have you considered the local community impact?" she asked when Zain finished his presentation, her voice calm but confident. The room fell silent. Zain turned to her, surprise flickering across his usually impassive face. "Explain," he said simply. Amira walked to the presentation board, her fingers tracing a map. "The financial projections are sound, but they're missing the human element. If you invest in local infrastructure, train community leaders, you'll create a sustainable model that goes beyond mere profit." To everyone's surprise, Zain listened, not just listened, but engaged. The meeting took an unexpected turn, with Amira's insights transforming a standard investment discussion into a comprehensive community development strategy. Later that evening, as they prepared for a charity gala, Zain found Amira in the massive walk-in closet of their suite, struggling with an elaborate traditional dress. "You're becoming quite the strategist," he commented, helping her with a difficult clasp. Amira caught his eye in the mirror. "I learned from running a small business. Sometimes survival means seeing beyond the obvious." Their proximity created an unexpected tension. For a moment, something shifted between them, a spark of mutual respect, perhaps something more. The charity gala was a grand affair. The cream of Dubai's social elite gathered in a massive ballroom. Amira moved through the crowd with a grace that belied her humble origins. Zain watched her, noting how seamlessly she adapted to this world, so different from her London cafe. "Who is she?" a prominent businesswoman asked Zain, nodding towards Amira. "My wife," he responded, a hint of pride in his voice that surprised even himself. But not everyone was convinced. Layla, Zain's cousin, continued to watch Amira with suspicion. During a quiet moment, she cornered Amira near the champagne fountain. "You're playing a dangerous game," Layla whispered, her smile never reaching her eyes. "Zain is not someone to be trifled with. This arrangement won't last forever." Amira met her gaze steadily. "I'm not trying to trifle with anything. I'm here to honor an agreement." Yet even as she spoke, Amira knew the arrangement was becoming something more complicated. Her feelings for Zain were shifting, becoming harder to define. He was no longer just a means to save her cafe. He was becoming something else entirely. Farhad watched the entire scene with knowing eyes. His plan was working perfectly. He saw the subtle changes in his grandson, the softening of his hard edges, the moments of genuine connection with Amira. That night, unable to sleep, Amira found herself in the mansion's library. She was studying a collection of family photographs when Zain found her. "Can't sleep?" he asked, joining her. "Just thinking," Amira responded. "About family, about connections." Zain was quiet for a moment. "My mother always said that true. Wealth isn't measured in money but in relationships." It was the most personal thing he'd ever shared with her, a window into the man behind the business facade. As dawn approached, casting golden light across the desert, Amira realized her life had irrevocably changed. The contract that had seemed so clinical, so transactional, was becoming something far more complex. And Zain, watching her silhouette against the morning light, felt something stir within him, a feeling he'd spent years carefully avoiding. The game was changing, and neither of them was prepared for where it might lead. The London cafe sat quiet and empty, a ghost of its former vibrant self. Amira's cousin, Sarah, walked through the space daily, maintaining the hope that her cousin's dream would somehow survive. The financial reports told a different story. Without Amira's daily management, the business was slowly bleeding resources. Thousands of miles away in Dubai, Amira was unaware of the mounting challenges back home. Her world had become a whirlwind of charity events, business meetings, and increasingly complex interactions with Zain. A surprise came in the form of an unexpected invitation. Zain's team was organizing a major international conference on sustainable development, and he wanted Amira involved. Her insights from previous meetings had impressed him more than he was willing to admit. "I want you to help develop the community engagement section," he told her one morning over breakfast. Amira looked up surprised. "Me? But I'm just—" "Don't," Zain interrupted. "Say you're just a cafe owner. You've proven you're much more than that." The compliment hung in the air between them, unexpected and charged with something more than professional respect. Their relationship had evolved into something neither could easily define. They were no longer just a contract couple, but not quite partners in the traditional sense. Something was shifting, delicate as desert sand, but undeniably present. Farhad watched their interactions with growing satisfaction. His plan was working perfectly. Each day he saw Zain becoming more human, more connected to the world around him. Amira was breaking down the walls he'd spent years constructing, but challenges were brewing beneath the surface. Layla, Zain's cousin, continued her quiet investigation into Amira's background. She hired a private investigator, determined to uncover what she believed was an elaborate deception. No one becomes part of the Al-Rashid family without a thorough vetting, Layla muttered to herself, reviewing the initial reports. The investigators' findings were frustratingly mundane. Amira Hassan was exactly who she claimed to be. A cafe owner from London, with no hidden agendas beyond saving her family business. But Layla wasn't satisfied. Meanwhile, the conference preparations consumed Zayn and Amira's time. They worked late into the night, their professional collaboration, revealing new dimensions of their relationship. Amira's creativity complemented Zayn's strategic thinking in ways neither had anticipated. One evening, as they reviewed presentation materials, Zayn caught Amira looking at a photograph of her mother. "Tell me about her," he said softly. Amira was surprised by his genuine interest. She shared stories of her mother, her passion for the cafe, her dreams, her belief in community. Zayn listened, truly listened, in a way he never had before. "She sounds remarkable," he said when she finished. Their hands touched accidentally while reaching for the same document. The electricity between them was undeniable, but professional. Success couldn't mask the personal tensions brewing. Zayn's grandfather called him aside one afternoon. "The year is passing quickly," Fahad said cryptically, "and your contract will soon expire." The reminder hung heavy between them. What would happen when their arranged marriage reached its predetermined end? Amira overheard part of the conversation. The reality of their temporary arrangement crashed back into her consciousness. The cafe in London, her original motivation, seemed both close and impossibly far away. That night, unable to sleep, she wandered the mansion's gardens. The desert night was cool, stars blazing overhead like scattered diamonds. Zayn found her there, lost in thought. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked, joining her. Amira turned, caught between vulnerability and self-protection. "Just thinking about home," she said softly. Something in her tone made Zayn look at her differently. For the first time, he truly saw her, not as a contract wife, not as a business arrangement, but as a woman with her own hopes, fears, and dreams. The night wrapped around them, full of unspoken possibilities and growing emotions that neither was quite ready to acknowledge. Their carefully constructed arrangement was becoming something far more complicated, and neither Zayn nor Amira knew exactly how to navigate the changing landscape of their relationship. The international conference arrived with the intensity of a desert storm. Delegates from around the world converged on Dubai, filling luxury hotels and transforming the city into a hub of global dialogue. Zayn and Amira stood at the center of it all, their partnership now a seamless blend of professional precision and unexpected chemistry. During the opening ceremony, Amira delivered a keynote address that left the audience spellbound. She spoke not just of business strategies, but of human connection, drawing from her experience of running a small cafe and her journey with the Al-Rashid family. "True innovation," she said, her voice resonating through the massive conference. "Helg isn't about numbers. It's about understanding the human stories behind those numbers." Zayn watched from the sidelines, a mix of pride and something deeper flickering in his eyes. The woman who had entered his life as a contract wife was transforming into something far more significant. But beneath the surface of professional success, personal tensions were building. Layla's investigation continued, her suspicions growing with each passing day. She cornered Zayn during a break in the conference proceedings. "Something doesn't add up about Amira," she whispered. "I can feel it." Zayn's response was immediate and unexpected. "Drop it," he said firmly. "Amira is my wife." The word hung in the air. Wife. Not a contract, not an arrangement. A wife. That evening, a private dinner was arranged for key conference participants. Amira found herself seated next to an influential environmental minister from Africa. Their conversation flowed easily, her genuine interest and knowledge impressing even the most seasoned diplomats. Zayn watched from across the room, seeing her in a new light. She was no longer just the cafe owner who had entered his life by chance. She was becoming a force of her own. Later that night, in the privacy of their suite, the tension between them reached a breaking point. "You were remarkable today," Zayn said, his voice soft. Amira turned, caught off guard by his genuine praise. "I was just being myself." "And that," Zayn responded, is precisely what makes you extraordinary. The moment stretched between them, charged with an emotion neither was prepared to name. They were inches apart, the line between their contract arrangement and something more blurring with each passing second. But reality had its own plans. A call came through. Trouble was brewing back in London. Amira's cafe, already struggling in her absence, was facing potential closure. The financial reports were grim. "I need to go back," she told Zain, her voice breaking. "Just for a little while." Zain's response surprised them both. "I'll come with you," he said simply. The trip to London was a journey of revelations. Zain saw Amira's world, the small cafe that had been her mother's dream, the community that depended on it, the struggles she had faced alone. Walking through the cafe, Amira shared stories. Each table, each corner held a memory. Zain listened, truly listened, understanding for the first time the depth of her attachment. "We'll save it," he said suddenly. "Together." It wasn't just about the cafe anymore. It was about something larger, a commitment that went beyond their original arrangement. Fahad's words echoed in Zain's mind. "True wealth is not measured in money, but in the connections we make." As they worked together to develop a strategy to save the cafe, something fundamental shifted between them. The contract that had brought them together was becoming something far more profound, but time was running out. Their arranged marriage was approaching its predetermined end. The question that hung unspoken between them was simple yet terrifying. What would happen next? In London, surrounded by the memories of Amira's past and the possibilities of their future, Zain and Amira stood at a crossroads. The carefully constructed walls were crumbling, revealing something neither had expected when this journey began. Love? Partnership? Something entirely new? The answer remained just beyond their grasp, waiting to be discovered. The London cafe became a battleground of emotions and strategy. Zain and Amira worked side by side, transforming the struggling business with a combination of her passion and his business acumen. Local suppliers, community connections, and innovative marketing strategies breathed new life into the space that had once been on the brink of closure. But beneath the surface, a storm was brewing. Layla's investigation had reached a critical point. She arrived in London unexpectedly, her perfectly tailored suit a stark contrast to the cozy cafe environment. Her eyes scanned the space, looking for any hint of deception. "Cousin," she said to Zain, her voice tight with controlled anger, "we need to talk." Amira watched the siblings interact, sensing the tension that ran deeper than their current disagreement. Zain's jaw clenched, a telltale sign of his inner conflict. "Not here," Zain responded, guiding Layla to a private corner. Their conversation was hushed but intense. Amira caught fragments, words like family honor and investigation floating between them. She tried to focus on reorganizing the cafe's inventory, but her ears remained attuned to their discussion. Fahad's unexpected arrival added another layer of complexity. The elderly patriarch had followed his grandson, sensing a critical moment in their journey. "Sometimes," he told Amira quietly, "the greatest discoveries happen when we least expect them." As evening approached, Zain called a family meeting. The cafe after hours became a stage for a drama years in the making. Layla presented her findings: months of investigation, background checks, financial records. "She's not who she claims to be," Layla declared, pointing at Amira. But her accusation fell flat. The evidence she'd gathered only proved Amira's authenticity, a woman who had struggled to keep her mother's dream alive, who had taken an extraordinary risk to save her family's legacy. Zain's response surprised everyone. "Enough," he said firmly. "Amira is my wife, our family." The word hung in the air, a declaration that went far beyond their original contract. Fahad watched the scene unfold, a knowing smile playing on his lips. His plan had worked perfectly. He had wanted to teach Zain about love, about connection, about the true meaning of family. And here it was, unfolding before his eyes. As the confrontation settled, Amira found Zain alone in the cafe's kitchen. The space that had once been her sanctuary now felt like a battlefield of emotions. "I'm sorry," she began. but Zain cut her off. "Don't," he said softly. "You have nothing to apologize for." Their hands touched, a simple gesture that spoke volumes. The contract that had brought them together had become something far more profound. Outside, London continued its endless dance of light and shadow. The cafe stood as a testament to resilience, to the power of unexpected connections. Fahad approached them, his weathered hand resting on Zain's shoulder. "My boy," he said, "you've finally understood what I've been trying to teach you all these years." Zain looked at Amira, then back at his grandfather. The walls he'd built around his heart were crumbling, revealing something vulnerable, something real. The year of their contract was drawing to a close, but something told them both that this was just the beginning of their journey. As night fell, the cafe seemed to breathe with new life. Amira and Zain stood together, no longer a contract couple, but something infinitely more complex and beautiful. The final chapter of their story was yet to be written. The year of their contract marriage was drawing to a close. What had begun as a calculated arrangement had transformed into something neither Zain nor Amira could have anticipated. The cafe in London now thrived, a testament to their combined vision and commitment. Fahad watched the unfolding story with quiet satisfaction. His grandson had learned the most important lesson, that true wealth existed beyond balance sheets and business deals. On the eve of their contract's expiration, a celebration was held. Not a formal gala, but an intimate gathering that brought together the threads of their journey. Local business owners from London, key members of the Al Rashid family, and the community that had supported Amira's cafe filled the space with warmth and possibility. "To new beginnings," Fahad toasted, raising a glass of traditional Arabic coffee. Zain stood beside Amira, their connection now visible to everyone. No longer was this a contract marriage. It had become a true partnership in every sense. Layla, her investigation having proven Amira's authenticity, approached them. "I was wrong," she admitted to Amira. "You're not just a business arrangement, you're family." The words carried weight. Family, a concept Zain had once dismissed as irrelevant, now meant everything. As the night progressed, Zain pulled Amira aside. The cafe's kitchen, once a place of struggle, now felt like a sanctuary of their shared dreams. "When our contract began," he said softly, "I thought love was a distraction, a weakness." Amira smiled. "And now I understand it's the greatest strength of all." Their kiss was not passionate or dramatic, but deep with understanding, a promise of something more profound than any contract could define. Fahad approached them, his health frail but his spirit vibrant. "You've learned the most important lesson," he told Zain. "Success is not measured by what you acquire, but by the lives you touch." The next morning, legal documents were signed, but these were different from their original contract. They represented a true partnership of the cafe, of their lives, of their future. Amira's mother's photograph still hung in the cafe, but now it was accompanied by new images of Zain and Amira, of their shared vision, of a family that had been created not by blood but by choice. The cafe became more than a business. It became a bridge between cultures, between dreams, between two worlds that had once seemed impossibly far apart. As they looked to the future, Zain and Amira knew their journey was just beginning.